Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And when it comes to news for EVE Online, I'll be honest, I haven't really kept up with the game too much over the last week. I have been completely addicted to X4 Kingdom End. That game is really in an exceptional place as well. When it comes to news though, we did get a patch for visual upgrade, so that was what the mass test that I joined was all about. Some improvements to the visuals for the game. That is of course one of the things that CCP has been extremely consistent for. This is a game that's, well, almost 20 years old at this point. It looks of course absolutely amazing, and speaking of 20 years, of course, the month of May is now fast approaching and we should get the celebrations for 20 years of EVE Online at that point. Definitely, I think, worth taking a look at. You only become 20 years old as a game once, and for most of them, never. And I'm expecting some pretty cool login rewards and stuff to do. So overall, looking forward to what's happening next month, and pretty happy with the time that I've spent in X4. I'll be honest, it's really cool. But we are of course here for the EVE Online stuff, so let's take a look at the new Eden store and see if there's anything happening here. We have the starter packs that are still marked as new, no sales. This actually is of course to be expected. I think they're gonna hold on to some sale action for the 20 years of EVE Online, and well, they've kept up with doing sales with skill extractors, skill injectors just last week. Lots of plex sales, not always in the new Eden store, also on the website. So I do feel like CCP has actually done a lot of sales in the last half year or so compared to the years before. We take a look at the services themselves, nothing on sale. Take a quick look here at apparel, nothing there. I'm expecting like a uniform as well in the 20 years, because for instance, XIX, so for the Alliance tournament, or is that, no, so that's going to be like 19 years of EVE Online. So I think that there's several of those that we'll be able to put together. But let's get going towards the market then. And as always, we will start with the pilot services that's coming in at 2:30. There we go, and let's go for plex. That has definitely chosen a direction here. You can see how 5-day moving average crosses that 20-day moving average. That is still flat, but every single day of the almost the last 5 days, we have that daily average also above everything else. Max prices starting to rise, minimum prices holding on, trying to hold on to a price below 4.5 million, but it's pretty obvious that upwards pressure for the price of plex is here. Yeah, a week without sales, without anything special, and immediately the pressure is mounting. We also of course have the 20 years of EVE Online that is coming. I do think that there are players that are very specifically coming back to the game now. This is the time to jump in. If you still have some plex lying around, you can maybe top off, get that 1 month through plex. I think that's something that's happening as well, creating some extra demand, which shows up through the price. 4.65 million for the sellers in GDA itself. In the player owned trade hubs, a little bit of competition down here, going down just a touch, but really not by much. And then for the buyers, 4.4 million going up to just below 4.5 million right now, just a couple seconds ago. So at the moment, plex is going up. I fully am expecting to see a little bit of extra demand due to the 20 years of EVE Online that is just around the corner. Next up, we have the multiple pilot train certificates still in here, of course, but you can see how the volumes are completely dying down. I'm expecting this to be 2 a day, or 1 a day, but it is actually 2 a day that are being traded, as I mentioned. This is now a legacy item, so nothing that you can create into the game again. Selling at 2.3 billion, buyers at 2.1 billion. My plan at the moment is to just keep it in here until the 20 years of EVE Online, and then we'll probably get a new start after that without the multiple pilot train certificates. Then we've got the skill extractors. So last week we saw what happened when CCP decides to do a pretty nice sale for those. 2 for 1 was the sale that we got, so from 510 million straight down on that first day, actually down to the lowest point. Let's see if I can snag it here, 430 million. And since then though, very fast absorption of huge volumes, by far the biggest volumes of the year. But you can see how the price here is responding very rapidly back to almost 500 million for the sellers, 457 for the buyers. I personally do think that quite a few players have also been buying, looking at this as an investment opportunity. In general, I think that we can sort of expect inflationary pressures to come back into the game as well. Impact on the injectors then, that's always pretty interesting. We've got the large scale injectors that were basically at the highest price range, you could say, of the year. I can see we're starting to build a little bit of pressure here. It could be that these big volumes are right now being turned into skill injectors that are then also finding their way into the market to bring the prices down. Who wouldn't want to sell a skill injector at 950 million? Then you get a cheaper skill extractor, so you're trying to take that profit right away. I think that is basically what's happening here, as sellers have been forced down to just below the 950 and buyers at 900 million. Still not a big spread, but I think a slightly higher spread than what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. Then we've got the small scale injectors, and I don't think, indeed, it cannot really do something completely different from this general pressure here. So you also have prices going down slightly, but definitely not trying to get to the 190 or anything like that. Far more careful in the small scale injector market. 192 million to 181 million. That is also 10 million back into a very similar percentage-wise spread between sellers and buyers for both skill injectors. That does make sense to me. And then we have the story of last week, of course, where CCP came out with another sale for the daily alpha injectors, and basically it did follow the pattern that we were expecting. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4 sales at this point this year for the daily alpha injectors, and you can clearly see as well how the time between the sales has been going down. Pretty normal when you're fighting inflation, basically inflationary pressures, and for an item that is being bought straight from CCP, you are trying to keep that within a range that is doable for alpha players. And I think that the 40 to 50 million range, below the 50, is what CCP is shooting for. And so we got a pretty big sale lasting quite a long time. You can see how the volumes went up for a long time and still held up here as we went down here. Definitely some position taking as well, because I've mentioned the market does notice something like that, and eventually people understand that if I can buy a daily alpha injector below 45 million, you can also see how the minimum prices have started to move up here as well. The market knows what's up, and so I can buy below 45 million. That is being picked up left and right as much as possible, because they understand that if you can then time things right, just before CCP decides to come in with another sale, basically, you are guaranteed, almost guaranteed, a profit on a trade like that. And so that's what's happening. Quite a bit of buying frenzy as well, keeping daily alpha injectors from coming back down below 40, for instance. We have weathered the storm for the last week. It's only 1 week though, quite nicely. 48 to 44 million, definitely a doable range for a alpha player to set a goal like that on a daily basis. We will see. I'm personally of the opinion that we will see pressure mount again more and more quickly. What I was most surprised by was after this huge bump here, of course, in September, up to 70 million ISK, that how long it took for the market, 1-2 months of just straight up even slightly declining prices on the daily alpha injectors, to then finally decide to bump up above the 50 million. That took quite a long time. Here only 1.5 months basically, then we got that bump, and here is a CCP sale, and it's gonna be interesting to see how this one evolves, and if CCP is basically willing to keep pumping sales into the daily alpha injector, will they eventually perhaps even have to consider just cutting the price down? Say, all right, a daily alpha injector, real life price goes down a little bit to keep the ISK value in check. That would be, I think, quite an interesting and unique decision from CCP to take. But if they want to keep this doable, then that might be eventually the step for them that they have to cross. Next up here we have the Hypercore, which is flat for the week. Also a bit of a surprise to me, honestly. We are starting to see inflationary pressures. If you kept an eye on the ticker, you know that it's not been a great week for minerals as well, with Nelsik again going completely ballistic, but here for the hypercores, definitely a flat week, basically still in that hesitation mode, not really knowing which way to go. 460,000 to 450,000, very tiny spread as well. Basically the hypercores, in my opinion, could go either way depending on what CCP announces. Next up we have those minerals then. Let's take a look at them at 1010. There we go, and we start with the bad news. Here is titanium, and you can clearly see how we've given up on the 4ISK seller when I was making the ticker at 399, so you can see the pressure mounting here. Not good news for those high-sec miners. If we go to the cheetah sellers, we're back at the 4ISK, so that just below 4 has been picked up now by someone, but this pressure is just continuing, right? Even here at 4ISK, we got 200 million units still coming in, 300 million here at 402, another 100 million at 401 through 3 sale orders. So overall, lots of pressure on titanium. Buyers are down to 377. They're all too happy to try and bring that titanium price below the 4ISK, and it's really looking like they are succeeding if you look at these average prices. So not good news for miners. I have been mentioning over the last couple of weeks that I would try to be patient, not bring in too much supply, and basically wait for better times. I do understand that eventually, especially for newer players, you will basically feel like you have to sell because you need the ISK for your plans in the game. Not everyone has the luxury to just be able to keep everything aside and wait for better times, for higher prices. And so I would fully understand if you personally feel like I need to sell titanium. I would not go over a 50-50. I wouldn't sell everything that I'm holding, trying to sell for or hold at least some reserves for above 4 ISK at some point. I think is not a crazy thing to do, but at the moment huge pressure, and it does look like we're giving up on that 4 ISK. And so if you feel like you have to sell, I would fully understand that as well, of course. Then we get the pyrite market doing a little bit better. Actually, you can see though the minimum price is definitely trying to push us to bring us down below that 10 ISK. Right at the tail end, we're definitely hesitating again. Look at the 20-day moving average trajectory, which is going straight towards that 10 ISK. But so far, sellers at 1024, buyers at 993. We have been able to defend the 10 ISK for pyrite, but 150 million, 100 million, 85 million, we still have pretty big numbers coming to the market here. I think what could give us a better idea as to what's going to happen in general is Mexalon, and very interesting, a little bump here on volume, so people buying stuff below a certain price, probably below the 55 is what happened here. But now look at that, unfortunately more pressure, and we're back below the 55, and we'll see if investors have the stomach to again come in and buy everything that is below probably up to a 58, something like that, maybe even a 60 if you look at the daily averages here. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen, as we have come down to 54 ISK for Mexalon, 52 ISK for the buyers. Basically, for me personally, if I would be mining a lot at the moment, I would hold off for 100%. But again, I fully understand that some players have to mine in order to get ISK and to do other stuff. So I would still try to go to like a 50-50 or something like that, rather than sell everything at the moment. Huge pressure. All that extra supply is just gonna confirm for those buyers we can go lower, we can push this high-sec mineral market lower, and eventually, right, you will have titanium break below 4 ISK, and then it's gonna be pretty tough to get out of that new range. So yeah, I'd hold off for better times. Low sec next. Here is the Isogen chart that is holding on quite nicely despite all the pressure, but you can clearly see that at the moment there seems to be a little bit less general demand for minerals. We're still staying above 600 ISK though, 600 for the sellers, 584 for the buyers, and the average of course right on top of the sell prices. So it is something that needs to be imported mostly from low sec. As a result, the sellers are completely dictating the price and definitely hovering at the highest range of the year. So a great time of course for those that are holding Isogen. And we'll take a quick look at volumes here as well. We got to go to 604 almost for 14 million and 10 million units. So 10 million here though, but you can clearly see that sellers are trying to keep us and will probably succeed quite easily in keeping us above 600 ISK, as those that are like that aggressive to go to 600 ISK, they got a couple 100,000 units of isogen that will easily be absorbed. The bigger volumes, 50 million waiting here at 604 though. So that's probably a couple of sellers here that have been keeping us in check for the last week. But again, the active supply, where the cutting edge, where people are really fighting for a 0.1 difference, for the smallest difference I should say, that is with very, very tiny volumes. And as a result, I don't think we can expect a crash in isogen from this price point. Then we've got Noxium, that is also holding on quite well. A little bit of hesitation at the tail end, but overall flat for the week at just below 900 ISK, 895 to 885. Again, tiny spread here. Sellers completely dictating this price range. And unfortunately for those that are looking for cheap minerals, so far this is looking like cheaper high sec, low sec holding on. But let's go to null sec, and alright, bit of a surprise. I thought Zydrine would follow the move of Megasite, but that is not the case, staying below 2000 is. So this is overall a little bit of a better week than I thought for minerals. More absorbable and more hesitation, clearly. Not really sure which way to go. 2000 to 1975, again a tiny spread because this needs to be imported, but overall on a 1 year chart this is a doable price. But then we go to our Megasite price chart, and that is of course the bad news, as we jump again to the highest range of the year. Just no resistance at 3000 ISK. You see, one day we're below that, the next day we're well above the 3000 ISK. Very strong price setting here by the sellers. 3,230 ISK for the sellers, and look at those buyers just having to follow zero choice. 3,156 here, very narrow spread, and completely dominated by what the sellers decide the price of Megasite has to be, which is very expensive at the moment. And then finally we got Morphite, that is staying just shy of 40k, so that does mean quite affordable. And buyers though, 39,000, they are, I think, forced up a little bit as well on not that much supply, as sellers would love of course to see the price of Morphite go back above 40k, but so far they have not succeeded. A full month here below 40,000 ISK, with a couple of really low days as well on some daily averages. So overall for the minerals, I thought we would be in for a very bad week, especially for high sec miners, when we look at what Tritanium was doing and then Megasite. So overall crazy differences between the different spaces, but everything else is basically holding on. So still in hesitation mode, I guess, this mineral market in general. Then we've got PI. One of you guys promised that they would sell a lot, so we'll see if that has come true, coming in at 1740. But yes, in general, for the PI market, maybe we'll start with that. Of course, extremely high prices, as I personally think. I don't have numbers. I'm not, I don't have the CCP numbers on this, but I do feel like after CCP intervened to fix some mineral bottlenecks, that PI, especially for large chip production, is also one of the bottlenecks. And as a result, we've got extremely high prices for advanced moon materials, and very high prices for a lot of the other stuff as well. And my personal expectation is that if CCP decides that they want to intervene to make stuff a little bit more doable, if they want to fix a new bottleneck, we might be hit eventually by a nerf for the PI market. It hasn't happened so far, so still crazy good times. All the PI that I'm making, I bring to the market, I sell right away. Because I do think that eventually these crazy great times in some of the items will meet its end. So let's get started. Here are the broadcast notes, and well, the spread is opening up here, but on average for most of the week still above 2.5 million. Sellers are at 2.6 million, buyers at 2.2. Bit of a spread opening up here, as I've said. So maybe just like the minerals though have shown that demand seems to be waning, and perhaps eventually this will show through into the PI market as well. But I honestly think that everything here is currently being used to feed that advanced PI materials market, which goes to larger ships, right? Titans, carriers, super carriers, dreadnoughts, right? Dreadnought gauges. And I don't think that we can expect that much of a cooldown in that arena, because That's all about nullsec. That's their full power, and that is an arms race that, in my opinion, basically never ends, because that's where you can gain an edge. Get the bigger capital ship fleet. That is basically what gives you real power on the battlefield in nullsec. So the construction blocks basically flat for the week as well. A little bit of pressure, but then at the tail end, immediately buyers coming in to try and take advantage of even these slightly lower prices. 11,200 to 11,000. Very, very tiny spread. Again, the demand is very high. Coolants had a breakout last week, and this to me is one of those signs that we are probably in quite a bottlenecked situation. This coolants though mostly tied to fuel, so maybe it is also just a general situation into the game that not that many players are doing a lot of PI. I personally can't really believe that, but maybe that is the case as well. But usually when you've got a breakout over a couple of weeks to a very pronounced one-year high point, you'd get a pretty significant pushback as players see, whoa, I can sell for 13k. They bring in coolants a little bit too much, and you would expect this to not be able to hold on that well. But yeah, here for this week we are basically still at 13,100 for the sellers, 12,400 for the buyers. Even here you get nowhere near to a 10% spread. That does show how basically desperate the market is for coolants, that they're willing to just accept this crazy one-year high price in a good that was already doing very, very well. Enriched uranium next. That is also one of those charts that I think eventually will come onto the radar from CCP. This is a refined PI material, one of the harder ones to make, granted, but 10,000 disc in general has, from my historical perspective, been a good price for refined PI materials. But here you can clearly see that something is breaking, as we are just continuously climbing for almost 3 months at this point to another one-year high point. And look at the data point here so far for the day. 18,000 disc for the sellers, 16,000 disc for the buyers. That is a lot of ISK that has to flow into the wallets of people making PI. Volumes are not great here either, so there is this desperation potentially for refined for PI in general, because if we here we go, we get a first completely different sign. Integrity response drones, that is a pretty sharp drop off, and you can see today's daily average clearly moving away from that 3 million plus range. But let's be honest, 2.5 months of really amazing prices above 3 million. Here the first one I think that gives up on that. No, actually look at that, sellers at 3.5, buyers at 2.5 million. Volume wise a little bit more here. So the way I see it, what happened here is someone decided to dump to the buyers on yesterday, basically, in order to get those average prices here below the 2.5 million, and that has an impact on the chart that's immediate. But sellers here, they're no 3.1 million almost for my integrity response drones. So once the supply to buyers dries up, we're just gonna go straight back above the 3 million for the average prices. Mechanical parts, same story as with coolants, except it started a week earlier, jumped up to 15,000 discs. This is built on barren planets. They're everywhere, super easy to make, and yet we are also basically flat for 2 weeks at this new higher range. Almost 15k for the sellers, 13,700 for the buyers. Very, very expensive. Miniature electronics then. Here we do have a little bit of a pullback over the last month or so, but again, it's all relative. It is a refined PI material, starts at 10,000 disc, then here goes up to a high point of 22,500 disc, over 100% gain here. So you do lose a little bit of ground. Eventually people are like, all right, that's something that might be worth changing some planets for, or digging up some old miniature electronics for, so you get some supply that brings the price back down. But we cannot come back down to like 12,500. Well, that would be like, in my opinion, a pretty high range. Historically speaking, no, it's 17,800, almost 18,000 for the sellers, 16,000 for buyers. Bit more spread here on this downward trend, but again from super high prices. Nano factories then, also an early one-year high point to almost 2 million ISK, and this one giving a little bit of ground from that high point, but for the last month or so basically flat at 1.4 million. Also very nice gains on a 1 year. Price wise, this is actually okay. So maybe this is what CCP is also looking out for. It's for all the advanced PI materials to really go a little bit crazy, which hasn't happened. There are definitely some of them that are a bit cheaper than the others. Next, we've got organic mortar applicators. That's a little bit more worrying though. You can clearly see that we're forming a double top at 1.5 million, over double the price from a year ago. Here volumes, as we touch 125 million and we go below that on a couple average day prices, crazy buyers coming in, they're desperate, and so sellers are right back, almost 1.5 million, buyers forced up above 1.3 million. So a double top at the highest range of the year. Very, very strong demand again. Recursive computing module, a little bit of nuance here because there is like an extra use for recursive computing modules that was detected in the file. So we jumped up to 4 million ISK, and now we are basically flat for the month here at 2.6 to 2.3 million. So very expensive again, but this is not all demand for capital chip production. There is this extra use for it, but robotics, full recovery and easily now above 100k. So 112 for the sellers, 110 for the buyers. Again, when I have a little bit more time, I am gonna hunt for some plasma planets, because that is very, very cool in my opinion. This is a specialized PI material that is once again worth over 100k, and you can actually build that on a single planet. I find that to be a very cool planets to set up. Basically, you get 4 base products, then you refine that, all of that, and eventually you get into the step for robotics. You can do it. It's really cool. It's slow as well. It slows down your need to get out of the to empty your planets, but it's also every single unit that's made is like 100k, which is pretty damn good. Then we get our rocket fuels that had a plateau of a couple of months at 15,000 discs as well. Finally we got a response, but yeah, that 10k is nowhere close, and at the tail end again you can see how prices are going back up. 14,400 for the sellers, so very, very expensive. Self-harmonizing power cores, another early spike up, 3.5 million in March. That's being absorbed at the moment, but again we're staying at that 2.5 range, just above that for the sellers, so we are still very expensive. Smart fab units, and this is something that I did not expect, but actually is quite logical. So the problem with the smart fab unit is that basically it doesn't have the consistent volumes of something like a coolant, which means that on the one hand, let's go back to the chart here, it can lose a lot of ground on some supply. And so you see we made it to 100k here for a week or so, and then we had to really give back a lot of ground over 1.5 months. But the opposite is true as well, of course. A need for some smart fab units, not even that much of it, can push the markets crazy high, and that's exactly what happened here in the last couple of weeks, as we went to a low point of around 60,000 disc, even below that on the lowest daily average for this month. All of a sudden, buyers are coming in and they're like, this is not stopping. This is a real opportunity. PI is super expensive, and so they've pushed the price up to 155,000 ISK, going from 60k to 155 in a couple of weeks. That is also something that is not really what you would expect in a market that is, you know, balanced on its current demand supplies, in its current demand supply situation. Sterile conduits next, losing a little bit of ground here as well. So honestly, advanced PI materials are not doing anything too crazy this week. 1.3 million to 1.2 million on the 1 year chart. It's not that much of a gain. As I've said, there are some that are doing a little bit better. Supercomputers staying pretty expensive, just shy of 150k. So again, this is just straight up to the new range. This is the new reality, and I've been selling since December, January. I think that was already a little bit better. Yeah, you can see that here on some of these refined PI materials, but then the specialized materials now have also gone up substantially and have basically moved to that new range, and in the last couple of months not been able to see any pushback on that. Synthetic oil then climbed up to 15k. The first one that last week was back at 10,000 is, but you can see that we spiked up to well above 11 already in the last week, and we're at 11k for the sellers. Problem here, apparently not a lot of buyers for synthetic oil. Might be a small opportunity, but again, keep the possibility that things might change here at the back of your mind. And then we get our synthetic synapses back again to the higher range. So we're talking 135,000 here for the sellers. Transcranial microcontrollers, basically on the 5-day moving average, we're at the highest point of the year yet again, 116k. Water-cooled CPU climbing as well, another 1-year high point for another one that had very inconsistent volumes, and so you can see how this price went below 5,000 disk for refined PI materials. Very cheap. Complete caught up here, 12,000 for the sellers, and buyers at 9.5 forced up for water-cooled CPU. From just a year ago to 8 months ago, I think people were like, this is an afterthought. We're swimming in the water-cooled CPUs. To all of a sudden now it's like we get a bit of a problem. So that is a very big change. And then another one that, in my opinion, really shows that change in PI, 1.5 million up to, at the moment, 2.8 million, and just basically a straight line to that new range. One little hesitation here, but after that, all of that snagged up by the market, and we're basically above 2.5 and stuck there for wetware mainframes. It's still a great time to make and sell PI materials. How long those great times will last is of course unknown. Next up, advanced moon materials, coming in at 3110. There we go. Let's go through this list, see what's happening. But in my opinion, I'm not expecting too much. So here is crystalline carbonate. Little bit of pressure for the week, but still within the 125 to 150 range, which is basically the gains from the CCP nerf that happened here in December to moon mining output, which had this very specific goal of increasing the value of stuff that was mined there. And so when we got a range of around 100 disk and below that, I think CCP got a little bit worried, so they've pushed this up 25 to 50% actually gain in value. Definitely not bad. Here for crystalline carbonate, a little bit of pressure for the week. Then for Caldari, it's titanium carbide. I've been doing a lot better over the last couple of weeks, basically moving in a 150 to 175 range. I do think Caldari have a little bit of an edge in the meta, and that is why they have this premium on especially Galente at the moment. But you can see at the tail end here also a little bit of hesitation. What we're not seeing is what I was actually thinking would happen, is a lot of volatility. No, this has been very easily absorbed by moon miners. Supplies are quite nice in this new price range, and so we're not doing crazy jumps or falls in prices for our advanced moon materials so far. For Minmatar, it's fermionic condensates, one little bump up here, but clearly I think this one is struggling the most. Price range now is 110 to 110, so the margin is the spread is very narrow, but clearly for Minmatar they have lost that heavy assault cruiser. I think that was hit very hard by nerfs, and as a result this one is now at the lowest price range. And then Amar was coming back down from an extremely good time as well, and this one right a little bit in between Galente and Caldari at the 150. That's where we find tungsten carbide, 150 to 144. So again, very tiny spreads, and I think now the price differences are dominated by meta, by the need for certain chips, and Caldari, in my opinion, of course, have that most powerful, most popular combination, shields, missiles, quite often with drones as well. That's just crazy good. Amar is doing quite well as well. Then it's Galente and Minmatar, unfortunately, at the tail end. Then we've got our metamaterials. We'll go through the same list. So here is Galente with photonic metamaterials. This one doing a little bit better. So in December we had our first response, and then we had a second build up up to 13,000 discs, so that was clearly a nice sell opportunity. But what was to be expected was that the market response would be there, that there are actually enough supplies to keep us in a 25 to 50% something like that gain. So 7,500 to just above 10,000 disc here. We're at the moment a bit above 10k for both sellers and buyers. So this was a sell opportunity, a little bit of volatility, but honestly it's nothing too crazy. And so now I think we'll start to move in that same price difference depending on meta, with pretty slow and steady differences in the price. That is my expectation. As you know, the difference is of course photonic metamaterials, you can see that from the price, is more complex to make, so it is later down the chain than the carbides, and as a result it needed a little bit more time to get that price gain to eventually hit the end of the old reserves. And maybe we need to do something, or there is a bit of a price opportunity, but eventually of course everything stabilized. I think we're basically at this point now. For Caldari, it's non-linear metamaterials. You can clearly again see how this one has a meta advantage, as we had a price bump up to 25,000 on a daily average, 20k on a 5-day moving average for the non-linear metamaterials. Very nice little sell opportunity here as well. And we have a continued slide up trend here, currently going for 17k for the sellers, 16.5 for the buyers. Really narrow spread here as well, but Caldari definitely quite a bit above the Galente version of the metamaterials. Then we've got Minmatar, which is plasmonic metamaterials, clearly struggling again to hold on to gains from the low points, 11.2 to 11,000 discs, so narrow spreads, but least popular one so far. And then Amar, which is here, terahertz metamaterials at 15k and above. I gotta quickly recheck for Galente here. That one was, definitely below 15,000. So we have that very big difference now clearly that is coming together between the carbides and the metamaterials, where Caldari is the most expensive, then you get Amar, then you get Galente. Here you still have a bit of an inversion, and then you've got Minmatar. So in general, I think this is where things are heading. We get a pretty stable advanced moon materials market that can still move depending on, of course, you know, big war, lots of moons destroyed, things like that can have an impact, of course, but in general most of the movements will be dependent on the meta in ships. Then we get our other advanced moon materials. Here are fermionic condensates, very flat for the week, a slight little bit of pressure. So here again we get a gain from the period before December, and that is, I think, what these markets will hold on to. Ferrogel doing quite nice, maybe making a double top at 30,000 discs, so this could be a slight sell opportunity, but clearly again moving in that new range in 2 steps right here in December. On the change we went from 15 to 20k to 20 to 25k, and now we are at 25 to 30,000 disc for Ferrogel. But all honestly quite surprisingly slow and steady. Here we've got Fullerite back on a 700 range instead of a 500 range, so that's definitely pretty nice as well. Hypersynaptic fibers from 5,000 to 6,000. You can see there's a bit of movement, but none of this is all that volatile. So, you know, for traders, very hard to make a lot of risk here, in my opinion. You can't really do a lot of trading. You gotta either hold on and wait for the one sell opportunity. It's just difficult, I think. Here we got again a month of slow and steady move up to 5 to above 3,000 disc. So all of that from the CCP's perspective, I think is very good news. It does, in my opinion, show that they've been quite successful when it comes to some of these extra products that they've added into the supply chains for production, with a very specific idea of we want some levers in hand ourselves so that we can direct. For instance, we want to make what happened was we want to make the dreadnoughts cheaper than the carriers to make, so that dreadnought caches remain viable. That's exactly what they managed to do with these types of interferences, you could say. And here for advanced materials, I really feel like they did exactly what was needed. It was like advanced moon mining, everything that comes out of there is becoming really very low in value. This has an impact making Tech 2 ships extremely cheap. That was really starting to be a problem for Tech 3 ships as a result. They were just that cheap. But CCP, with one very smart, very pinpoint change, did manage to basically fix that problem and not completely destroy the market, have too many unintended consequences. This just tended to gain 25 to 50%, something like that, for most advanced moon-meters, which was probably exactly the goal. Pressurized oxidizers had a nice double top here at 15k and is now 7.5 to 10,000, 10,000 to 12.5. So doing quite all right. So reinforced carbon fiber, excuse me, bit more, 7.5 to almost 15,000 is. That's a bit more of value gained here. And finally we get our ceramic fibers, clearly again in 2 steps, 250, 300, 350, and at the moment coming back down a little bit from that pretty nice high range. So advanced moon materials, unfortunately, I personally was expecting more volatility after that change, but for those that trade, that want to trade, we want more volatility. That just never materialized. Very smart and stable change here from CCP that has, in my opinion, been absorbed by the player base, by the market, and we're now back in a pretty steady situation. And thus for the Tech 2 ships coming in at 40.20. This also means that we don't have that much volatility, that much opportunity for Twitch trading. It is here and there, but most of these, we've seen that last week as well, have basically shown us one very nice sell opportunity, which was the combination of what was happening in advanced moon materials with, of course, the war in Nullsec. A little bit of hype around that probably drove some buying for some fleets, and as a result, here for instance the Basilisk, we had this one opportunity at 180. At the moment, for the last couple of weeks, we have been going back up very nicely, but you can see it is slow and steady. It used to be that you could buy in 1 week and then the next week sell, and then the week after that maybe buy again, maybe 2 weeks after that. We had way more volatility than what we're seeing here. This is now slow 1 month, 2 month moves, things like that. It is doable for trading, but it's not like super fast. It's not something that you necessarily need to keep an eye on every single day, especially here. That would be quite depressing if you buy at 180 expecting more volatility and maybe even higher highs, and then for almost 2 months straight you're watching your investment go down in value. Not that great, but here, right, with that one minimum price getting back below 130, clearly that was not too good. So seeing this as a jumping point would have been quite nice, but the new what you need to do, in my opinion, is then really try to spot those buy and sell opportunities. You can see here max prices almost went to 180, so we're probably starting to crest already, with the Basilisk coming in at 164 to 142. Pretty large spread here. Then we get the Cerberus, probably for me personally the most disappointing ship so far, although we are still slowly getting up in price. Volatility, absolutely nothing. Currently going for 165 to 151. And I think I've got 2 of these, hoping that I could like sell them for 200 million, get that 60-70% profit, but that just hasn't happened yet. A couple of the others though far better. Here is the Curse Spike up to 250, has been absorbed, and you can see that we're still in a pretty high range on this one, 182 to 170. Then we get the Damnation, a second one, right? We're just too late. So a couple of days ago we're back above 400 million ISK for the Damnation. We're still selling there, 407, but look at that spread, 313 for the buyers. So definitely a smaller market, harder to trade in, but 2 sell opportunities above 400 million. That's not so bad. Here is the Deacon then. Some of these logistics frigates, I really thought these could do well. Smaller ships, more volume. And so I was hoping for more volatility, but this one is just stuck at a range just above 20 million, so that's not too great. Here is the Eagle, went up to 180 and now slowly down to 130 to 150. There's really not much to say. The EOS is nice. That's a pretty nice chart. Volume wise also pretty interesting. So to my surprise, it's actually command ships that are seeing some nice volatility, but this is definitely really cool, especially if you go for the full spread. So max price here, sell at above 400 million. Just a bit before that, you could buy at 250. But look here, very close to 250 again. Back at 450, back at 250, two opportunities, and again at 400 million. That is the volatility that I was hoping for. But yeah, the EOS on a daily basis, 20, 30, something like that. It's not that easy to make a lot of sales and to find those minimum maximum prices. So be a little bit careful, of course, but this is of course great for traders, these types of charts. Currently 420 million for the sellers, 335 million for the buyers. Then we've got the EOS, probably because it has that like 5 large drones, which is quite unique. So it's gonna be part of a meta. It's gonna be part of some PvE activities as well, in my opinion. And it's really a great ship. I think I'm holding 2 of these, and really cool. And of course, not that much supply, not that easy to make, and so you get this crazy volatility here. That's actually what happened. I thought we would see like stealth bombers and things like that, but that never really materialized. So here we get the Ares, 2 tops here at 70 million as well, and then a slow and steady with again a minimum prices going below 40 million for a couple of days. So this may just be the time to buy 44 to 38 million. This may be your time to jump in and then hope that we can see something like that again. That doesn't necessarily happen, but this starts to feel like potentially that's the new range to jump in. Flycatcher, yeah, not much to say. 1 top, 1 sell opportunity, and then a slow and steady coming back down below 50 million. But is this the jumping point? I hope not. Hope we can go lower. Guardian then, right, couple of months straight up to 200 million, and since then hovering at 150 to 180 million. Currently still pretty expensive. 170 to 164. That's not exactly. Oh yeah, there you go. Max price actually coming back down a little bit at the moment, but everything coming together. So that's the bad news, right? You can see how the max prices are coming down. You see how the minimum prices are going up. All of that coming together to find a new range. That's not a good sign for volatility. The Heretic, 1 sell opportunity, full recovery. We're touching that 37.5 million. If you need to, or if you want to have another trade, this does look like a possibility to grab a couple Heretics and then hope for maybe something to happen in nullsec, maybe something to happen with 20 days of 20 years of EVE Online, something like that. That looks like like a possibility. And here are, for me, the most disappointing Tech 2 ships. Stealth bombers, that Hound just not doing anything. 1 slight sell opportunity to probably 25, 26 million. That's not great. That's not exactly what I was looking for. And now just stuck at 20 million, even just below that now for the sellers. Ichthyrsa for Triglavian, pretty stable in the last couple of weeks. Definitely some gains over the last 1.5 to 2 months. Here with minimum prices going up to a price well below 500 million to above 500 million, but I keep mentioning that, of course. Triglavian, very nice if you got the ISK, right? 500 million to jump in is quite a lot. The Ishtar then, yeah, back just below 180, but you can see how we're just getting stuck in this new range, so nice buy opportunities are not forming here. The Kirin, logistics frigate, 1 sell opportunity, and now a slow and steady downwards price point, so not much to say. Manticore also very disappointing. 23 million to 21 million. That's really not going anywhere. The Nemesis, yeah, back well below 20 million at this point, so not great. Nighthawk, I think this is just a bad chart because we do have some volatility here. Look at that again, that minimum price touching that 250 million, and then off to the races with, at the moment, Nighthawks at 395 million. Very expensive sell prices, so those command chips are pretty good for the volatility and the selling, but of course volume wise it's not easy. So I would never do more than 1 command chip. I think I do have 2 of the EOS, but 1 for personal use and then 1 potentially to trade in. Where were we? Nighthawk, yeah. Then we've got the Oneros. Definitely some volatility, but again, not great in the volumes, and here again max prices starting to come down, minimum prices clearly going up as well, 130 to 150. We're finding that new range, and unfortunately, unless we can break that chain, that is it. One sell opportunity in the Purifier, one stealth bomber that still gave us something, and now just landing on the 20, not much to see here. Then we get the Rook. That's not bad, but again, 10, 25 a day is not a lot. 180 to 150, so pretty expensive at the moment. Saber, one very pronounced, of course, sell opportunity at 60 million. This was due to the war, no doubt about that. We're back at 40, and buyers are at 38 million. This is another one you could consider. I think those interdictors coming in below 40 million. Pretty nice jumping point if you look at it from a chart perspective. Scalpel logistics frigate, minimum price is dumping below 10 million at this point. Is that really what's happening? Yeah, 8.5 million. Well, that's another one I think you could consider buying, maybe one or two, but again, keep an eye on the volumes. It's not a very popular ship. Then we get the Scimitar back above 150. Yeah, all right, coming back down from this, so we're basically a little bit late for a small sell opportunity, but again, the new range 130 to 150, that's pretty much it. Sleipnir had that very early volatility up to 350, and at the tail end here is coming back up, but nothing too special. 282 to 256. Wouldn't want to jump in, wouldn't want to sell. Vagabond, same story, just no volatility. We're basically from below 150 on some occasions to, well, just the minimum prices can try that, but that's about it. And then finally we get the Zarmast confirming a pretty stable Triglavian situation at around 500 million. So for the Tech 2 ships, there are some trade opportunities. I think here and there you could jump in on some cheaper ones, especially some of the interdictors look pretty interesting. But you are probably dependent on outside factors, like something happening in nullsec or something big being announced by CCP, for that to actually give you a sell opportunity. At the moment, just like with advanced moon materials, I think everything that happened with the changes to moon mining and with the war has been absorbed by the market, and that we're actually in a stable phase for now. Unfortunately for those like me that would like to do a little bit more trading. Then we've got the Tech 3 ships next at 5120. Let's see what's happening here. We know that some of these destroyers went quite high, and ooh, that's interesting. The Confessor going ballistic, very pronounced 1 year high point. I did not expect this at all, but we're talking 90 million on no availability for the Confessor. Is there a reason for this? Is there something event related that might push people to really need some Confessors at the moment? That's maybe a possibility. Is it nullsec? Is there someone that's like still buying fleets? Well, it's not really shown here on the volume, so it's maybe just complete exhaustion. There's no one bringing in Confessors, and so we're jumping up to a new higher price range. Maybe someone knows something about changes to tactical destroyers. I personally am of the opinion that that is a route that CCP can take as well. If they decide that, well, Tech 2 ships are, you know, decently affordable and that's where we want to keep them, then maybe they need to buff the tactical destroyers in order to make their price a little bit more, price value a little bit more competitive. That's a possibility as well. Very interesting, very unexpected. If you happen to have some Confessors, then you can definitely sell at a great price at the moment. Hecate doing the same thing, a pretty big spread, not on a lot of volumes, but selling now for 65 million, highest price point of the year. I'm starting to think someone maybe dug up some information in patches or on a test server or something like that and knows something that we don't. Jackdaw not moving that much, but at 57 million, definitely decently expensive. And then this Vapel, let's see what's happening here as a result. Also clearly moving to a new range here. 73 million for the sellers, not a lot of availability. 53 million for the buyers. They're not following though, so very strange. Most likely reason is just supplies are completely gone, and they have to move to a new range just to get a little bit of action going. Another possibility, as I've said, maybe someone found something in some files and is expecting good news for the tactical destroyers. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on that, but this is unexpected. Confessor 1 year high point, Jackdaw 1 year high point, and Svepel 1 year high point as well. So I was not a big fan of this, but if you did buy some tactical destroyers, you are looking at profitable times right now. It's not going to be easy to sell though. Volumes are really bad. Next we've got the cruisers. Here is the Legion, unfortunately quite stable at that 200 million for the sellers and probably 190 for the buyers. 202 to 187, something like that. So here volatility has left the Legion market a little bit, so not easy to spot a sell or a buy opportunity. The Loki, that's a little bit better. You can see the pressure on these daily averages. Unfortunately, buyers are quite aggressive, staying at 185. 200 million for the buyers here as well. But I think with these daily averages, with a bit more pressure, if we can touch 180 on the buyers, then that would be a nice jumping point. Next here we get a Produce, also pretty stable around 200 million, so we do have a bit of a coming together of the price ranges for these strategic cruisers, and we're talking 196 to 186, so not that much of a spread either. And finally the Tengu also showing a little bit of pressure here, going for 192 to 182. The 180 starting to come into play here for the Tengu on the buy side. If pressure can mount enough, then we can potentially, I think, get a jumping point for these strategic cruisers. Unfortunately, if there's like an event or something like that, including some combat sites that would come for 20 years of EVE Online, that should be next month. Tactical, these strategic cruisers do tend to be very popular for that. I think we may just never really get to that buy opportunity for the strategic cruisers, but very, very unexpected move here in the destroyers. It's going to be interesting to see if we can find out what made this happen. And then we get the extra product for the week, something we haven't checked in a long time either, are the freighters. So that's what we're going to take a look at 55.55. There we go. So probably the largest high-sec capable ships that you can make. Capital ships, freighters, and here we go. So here is the Providence for Amar. Alright, very interesting. Basically a flat year for the Providence at 3 billion. It is of course a very expensive ship. You can see here how in September we went down to 2 billion, so there's definitely a bit of a spread over the 1 year chart, but the last 5-6 months or so basically flat at 3 billion for the sellers, 2.9 billion for the buyers. And unfortunately I don't think we have any reason to expect this to change. PI very expensive, minerals starting to move a little bit, but it's basically not too expensive on high sec and quite expensive for null sec, so I don't expect this to really move all that much. Here is the Charon, 3 billion at the start, also a dip in September to 2 billion, so that's definitely quite a loss, but at the moment, and again last 4 months on this one, just above the 3 billion on average. 3.2 to 3 billion for the buyers, a bit more expensive than the Amar version. Obelisk, which is what I have, staying well above the 3 billion as well, and buyers are at 3.2, 3.7 here, so we're lacking obelisks, and these are actually here for the sellers up here. So they're not doing that well though. What's most action is actually obelisks being sold to the buyers here at 3.2. Then we get the Fenrir for Minotaur, which historically, from my perspective, has always been a little bit cheaper, but no, it's right on the 3 billion mark here as well, with the same dip to 2 billion in October. So this has really become quite a uniform market as well, above 3 billion and at 2.8 for the buyers. And finally, our unique one here is the Bowhead, that's also costing 3 billion, 2.9 for the buyers. Basically a flat year for the freighters. Pretty interesting, but not that much to say. Basically, you're going so big here and you've got so much stuff in this. Let's see if we can get industry, and then we can get the blueprint. So you get all these capital ship parts. You also have these new items here that require quite some stuff, and so this is actually pretty stable and pretty expensive at the moment as well. 3 billion for a freighter, that's still quite a bit, but I do think that CCP is basically quite happy with that. One of their stated goals like a couple of years ago was also to maintain some value in some stuff, and freighters are definitely a part of that. Anyways, that's it for this Eve Talk then, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.